Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Wanaka Oberhuber. My guest today is Bastiaan Berende. Did I say it right?
Yeah, Berende. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, good. So nice to have you here.
thank you.
So,
It's always
I'll,
nice to
I'll
be here.
yeah, I'll ask you the big question that I like to ask everyone. How did you get to see the world the way you do now?
Um, the same way everyone does, I guess, by having certain beliefs and perceptions and ideas about things, and therefore coloring everything see outside myself according to certain things that are within my field of awareness. Some certain things that are in my theme. Uh, Certain things that I value that seem more important than other things, um, and just a progression of working on myself, spiritual growth as well as personal growth for the last 12 years, uh, undoing certain beliefs and certain patterns, and I'm really smack in the middle of doing that work. So, and that's going back to kind of letting go of everything in Course in Miracles said, and coming back to some basic premises, such as I'm right now I'm just working on removing the obstacles to the awareness of love's presence, and where I'm really going at is just the way I experience the Course in Miracles, or the way of mastery, or anything like that. It seems to come from the top down, and like so I just pronounce some ideas to be true in my mind, declare them, and somehow everything will follow. But in my experience, that is not necessarily the case. So my last 12 years have been about like working from the bottom up, not from the top down, like learning how to walk before I know how to fly. I started flying, and now I'm starting to learn how to walk. Um, So how I'm seeing everything, yeah, it's different from moment to moment, depending on what mood, what parts in me are active. Am I in the calm self of being, or am I taken over by triggered angry consciousness, or am I protecting myself from certain emotions, or am I back in a childhood state? So it really determines. Yeah. So whatever kind of state of mind I find myself in is the way I'm going to perceive the world. And the goal, of course, is to balance all those parts out, and to finally come into a consistent and calm and peaceful state of mind or realization. Um, you want me to keep talking? You'll jump in if you have any other questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a really good observation because where you are at is how you perceive the world, right? At that
That's
moment,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it follows that your whole story changes every time you change where you're at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I guess the practice, or spiritual practice, if you call it, or a way of becoming awake in your life here on earth, is becoming aware that you are filtering the world in from those perspectives, and that those parts in myself are not necessarily who I am. There are parts that I have become as in reaction to certain trauma, or childhood experiences, or coping or protecting myself from intense emotions or whatever else. But I become fully identified with those parts as who I am. And it is very scary to come to the realization that I simply do not know who I am. Because every time I think, oh, I really thought that's who I was, and another layer gets peeled off, and I'm again left with nothing, with not knowing, with feeling a sense of devastation or powerlessness, or a feeling of simply being back at square one. And I guess that's really where humility comes in. if in more and more realizing that fact. And and this is really like I have avoided. I haven't done anything in the sense of like this coming into somebody's show or doing any type of presentation with which I used to be very active in with the Course in Miracles, but it was just I had to drop down. I wasn't true. I wasn't like fully realized into being able to manage my own emotions and being able to shift out of certain really dark ways of perceiving stuff and not knowing how to deal with other people's emotions, because when you start teaching this, then yeah, all of a sudden take on some responsibility for other people too. And I had to step back from all of that and say I really got to work on myself. And I'm glad that's where I find myself. So I'm really showing up here with nothing to promote, and just yeah, giving answer to your call for and just being open to anything the universe might present to express myself in. So I do have a recognized commitment to walking towards the truth, and that has never changed for me, except I get sidetracked. And lately, and I think maybe this is why I come onto you with this podcast, is feel more consistent and committed in that. And I just let things, I have enough humility to really face myself in this and become more true to myself. I'm 49 years old, so I have been doing this for a while, and finally, but still, back to square one every time. So,
Yeah, I think
not
that's actually very a beautiful place to be coming from, just where
mm-hmm.
you are at. So
Yeah,
if you're angry, you're angry. If you're sad, you're sad. And not
yeah,
to say that that's something you're
it's not
not
happening
allowed
to
to
me.
be. You're
Yeah,
not allowed to
exactly.
be that, because I
Yeah,
think that's pretty dishonest,
it is. Yeah, yeah,
because that's something that we do experience, no matter how far on we may think we're at some point, right? Or not.
exactly. Yeah,
These
yeah,
things do come up in our lives, and they do bring up dark things and dark
mm-hmm.
actions and so on. So I'm very
Yeah,
happy that you're honest about that. I think
yeah, absolutely.
and the commitment is what's so important, right? We're
It's all
committed.
important. Yeah.
We're
Mm-hmm.
very committed, no matter how dark the hour might be at a certain point.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. And yeah, what I can offer is, the ways in which I've been working with myself have been very powerful. Knowing that it is important to find some way to be in service or in fellowship or some kind of support network. This doesn't. I can't do this in isolation. I come up against myself in relation, to my wife in marriage and other friendships, and especially I kind of limit myself to groups that have a similar purpose of not so much spiritual awakening at this point, even though I'm open to that, but more the personal growth work, because that really removes the obstacles, and the God or whatever it is that you might be seeking for as a spiritual seeker reveals itself by itself in its own time. So I don't really have to, I don't have to establish anything there. I just got to remove everything that stands in the way of the awareness of it. And that's where I've been coming from for the last 12 years, going into prisons as a volunteer, and not like, oh, I got something that other people don't have, but really sitting down on an equal level and doing my work, in front of them, and that creates the trust for them to do their work. So if I don't show up in my integrity and honesty, then I can't help anyone else to do their work. So um, and that takes away all arrogance, all those kind of like self-created identity parts. that you may run into on this path to awakening. And sometimes you need somebody to point those things out to you. And I guess always you do, as we are very good at fooling ourselves, or I'm very good at it. And but that's not because I want to fool myself, because I'm simply not aware what's in place in my psyche. It's very elaborate in here, within myself. There's a lot going on. So yeah, if that makes any sense.
It certainly does. And
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful way of seeing your service, is to be walking the path together,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
that's affirming our equalness. And of course, the
Yes,
Miracle says that we are equal.
it does. It does. And
Yeah,
Jesus says we're equal. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think that's a
Yeah.
really, really good point, and it's a really, really challenging thing for us to accept, because there's
It
always
is.
this idea you have to be better or you have to be worse. You have to categorize, you have to make hierarchies and this and that in
Yeah.
your teaching status or your learning status, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think
Yeah.
that's
And
very
that's.
beautiful, and I'd love you
Mm-hmm.
to expand on that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm reading in the Way of Mastery right now. That's kind of my hold on. I know the course inside and out. Like, I created like time to teach programs at the time. I correlated every section, every lesson according to certain topics, and very massively done. And but then, yeah, I had to drop all that. It might come back online. I don't know. I thought about it several times. But right now, the Way of Mastery is also, yeah, the same voice as Jesus talking, and it gives me very integrated and practical practices. Just letting me, yeah, realize again, and reminding myself every day, like, yeah, I am creating my reality. I'm choosing the qualities of life that I experience. So I can create, or and in the way I can say I can create, or I can say, like, I pray for an experience of consistency in my life, or tranquility or peace, or yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I can just sit down and remind myself of, yeah, my true identity, but without losing sight of just whatever is real and what's going on in my own life. And it's such a tendency to kind of cut myself off from the more mundane. And 15 years ago, somebody, or 10 years ago, I don't know, somebody said, just get off the mountain and start, coming down from that mountain. I'm not really sure where I'm going with this, but anyway, I really like that book. And oh yeah, what I wanted to say about is that Jesus talks in the first person about, his own experiences when he was walking on this earth, and I find that very helpful. And I recognize that as a child, or as an adolescent, or as a young adult, or as an adult now, I have exactly those type of feelings, or tendencies, for example, to wander off alone, to find yourself in a world that you can't really fit into, and you see other people like fitting in a way that feels natural to them, and then feels unnatural to me. And sitting down in a park and watching, the glimmerings on the lake when the sun shines on it, and then feeling into it, and seeing there's something underneath all that represents a reality where somebody else might say, "Oh, you're just a dreamer," or something like that. But we're like hinting at a mystery of life that reveals something that's more true than everything that we can witness to, that we usually witness to from our perception. And again, yeah, everything is about relinquishing judgment, and the most and where I practice that the most is my judgment towards, yeah, towards myself and others equally. Uh, but I'm very hard on myself, And I expressed to, I'm working with an IFS practitioner who witnesses my work uh, in parts work. IFS means internal family systems, and that's what I talked to you about. Like I encountered that first in the Mankind project, which I'm part of. Those are men's groups in America and all over the world, where men come together to work on, their emotions and communications and issues in life. And I, like I mentioned, I did the Truth Project, and that's inside of the prisons, which is also with only men. Um, for whatever reason, that's kind of how it's shaped up, because men have particular issues, and women have their own issues, and kind of by default, the way we're conditioned and brought up. Where I was going with that was what I recognized in the processes that were being taught in those programs was a lot of that had to do with parts. So there's a part of me that wants that, and parts of me that thinks that or believes that. And um, in those men's groups, those parts were often externalized by having other men represent those parts, so that I can look in or look out from within, say, and then have those play out. It's more like a psychodrama thing. But what I'm doing now is more, one-on-one, and I'm really connecting with those parts in myself, and that's where I find a lot of healing is happening. And I see that things really take place not from a place of effort, but a place of no effort, not from a place of knowing, but from a place of not knowing, and allowing myself to be surprised every time, and humbled. And it takes a real place of a real attitude of readiness. And that's what Jesus says too. Like, reality is all around you. It's a lot simpler than you think. But our minds make everything so complex and cover everything over in complexity. And that's exactly the same with our parts. We have a system of parts that protect us, and other parts that are hidden away, that we don't want to look at. Certain emotions that are uncomfortable, we're not going to let them come up. And it's really uncomfortable to face those things, especially, I guess, if you have trauma, or and I guess everyone in this world comes in, especially sensitive minds like ours, with trauma. You cannot avoid it. It can be just one simple remark by a dad that wasn't even so badly intended to a really abusive act, or a period of time where you were uh, how do you say, approached with neglect or whatever it may be. So we form parts. Everyone has parts. It's not like we are born as one thing and then we get split into 1,000 pieces because of trauma. That's not what I'm saying. We all have parts, but they become polarized through the experiences that we may have. But we never lose self. And so that's why I love that model, same as with A Course in Miracles. Like yourself, your true self, can never be affected by anything here in this world. Like the worst trauma cannot affect who you are. And that's why I never particularly like psychiatry or psychology, but this IFS model works because it acknowledges that there is a self that you have access to, and that self is also the source of your healing. And that's the one that witnesses and reconnects with those parts that are left behind in time, in a certain position, in a certain reaction, or a certain role or function, that can now be led back to the present moment. And that's very powerful. Yeah.
Did you do that through meditation or through? I think you were speaking of playing it out, right, in groups.
Yeah. Yeah. It is played out in groups, and in the Mankind and in the Truth Project, people had versions or certain processes that are based on this model of IFS. And then I was finally, because I found it so effective. Another process that was being done was family constellation. So that's also a very powerful process where healing takes place. Anyway, I can talk a little bit more after I explain this. Um, but it led me to find out what was at the root of those processes, and that is the IFS. Richard Schwartz, who invented or discovered parts work, because his clients were always talking about, yeah, part of me this and that, and another part this and that. So he really developed a model based on those messages he got from his clients at the time. And I found it so powerful because you're not aware of those parts until you look at them, and then they are immediately there. And I just started my own group with IFS, with men from the mankind, and we're just doing practices from parts work, and they are immediately able to identify the parts and knowing, yeah, I'm walking around with this all the time. This part is very strong in my life, the functioning, whether it's just being resentful or thinking you're a sidekick, and all those parts of all those underlying beliefs. So that's nice to work with a part, because then you can really reveal the underlying beliefs that normally wouldn't come to the surface like that. But because you approach those parts with compassion and recognize that they all have a positive intention, that they will be willing to come forward and work with you. And so one of the confusing concepts in A Course in Miracles is the ego. And the ego, of course, is a word invented, as I understand it, in psychology, and whenever that started with Freud and Jung and those type of big names. The ego, I find it now a very confusing concept. It never really gelled well with me. I kind of categorize it the same as fundamental Christians talking about the demons or the devil. It still has a bit of a negative connotation in the approach of what stands in the way of you recognizing who you are. So instead of saying the ego, you can say, okay, these are parts in me that are at work, like addictive parts or parts that are rageful, or like all the things that we may define or judge to be dark or bad, that actually have a positive intention for us and trying to do their best for us and are working really hard at it. And so that gives me a whole different handle on myself, where I would walk around very ashamed for certain things that I keep pushing away, and now recognize they actually had a very positive intention for me, except they might not be as effective for me anymore in the present time. You know what I'm saying? So it's like their intention is pure, except their strategy is not fully functional, let's put it that way, or healthy for me anymore. Does that make sense?
Well, I know the concept. It was used in Awakening the Light Body. It was called subpersonalities.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
That's another word for it. Yeah.
I think that's the same idea, right? You'd have
It is.
meditations with subpersonality journeys, where
Yeah.
you'd really try to make peace with them and then bring them up to date where you are at now. So it sounds very similar.
Yeah, you mentioned meditation, and I think meditation is definitely helpful to bring yourself into self, to find a balance, and from that self you start approaching those parts. And that's so opposite to how I used to practice with meditation and A Course in Miracles. Like, once I was in self, I wouldn't want to go down. I wouldn't want to come down here anymore. I would want to stay out. I don't want to leave this place. Do you know that kind of
Absolutely.
sentiment?
I thought that was very interesting when you started. You were speaking of coming down from the mountain. Now, I think I'd like to hear more about that because you're speaking of how you had to confront your aversion to the mundane.
Yeah. Somehow at an early age, I started creating. I adapt as a child and adolescent to very intense situations and emotions in my family, for example, and I would be keen on kind of creating a substitute reality for myself, where I would find comfort, where I would find like also substitute emotions, emotions of peace and calm, and maybe idealistic states of minds even. Um, so whatever is positive or negative, they both have the tendency to keep me away from who I truly am. So I think who I truly am is not avoiding any of the intensity of what I have judged to be negative or positive, because that's not how spirituality worked eventually. Um, and for a lot of people, that means they have to hit a bottom, um, or devastation, as we call it. I like the word devastation because you build yourself up a certain way, like a house of cards, and then something comes into your awareness that knocks it all over because you can't maintain all the beliefs that you have built up for yourself, and it's a very scary moment. It's kind of the same with this. So I build all the sub personalities to cover over uh, the darkness, and also, dim the light in me. Um, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just trying here. I don't always know exactly how it works, but
Yeah, well, it's a way of using the imagery, right, to
yeah,
be able
yeah.
to work with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean,
imagery is very important too.
A Course in Miracles uses a lot of imagery too, with these
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
different pictures, these different things that it comes up with, where you can really see the meaning. The one with the picture where it was the how the what's on the picture and what's around it, what's framing it, the frame in the
Right, what's
picture,
framing it? Right, the
yeah,
frame and the
or the
content. Yeah.
or
Mm-hmm.
the desert, or the place where you can always take as much as you want, and there's always more, right? And the
Yes.
doors are
Yes.
kept open by the angels,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
things like that. There's so many beautiful pictures in A Course in Miracles.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or if you're in the desert and you don't want to be there, you have to leave the desert.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
imagery, so
Yeah. It's
I
absolutely
think that's
beautiful.
actually a method in A Course in Miracles to work with imagery. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the lessons have very strong imagery. Yeah. Um, Also the experience of grace. So when you had that moment where I was just describing that devastation, and you because you keep walking up against yourself all the time, right? And those are the parts again. Like, we have certain strategies, and they work for a little while until you hit a wall, and then all of a sudden doesn't work at all anymore. None of it. So, and then for a moment, you hit those really intense fearful emotions. Like, I had it once where I literally felt my body was dying, like, I felt so intense. uh, and Jesus calls it the dark night of the soul. And then so this can be like a one-time life-changing experience, or it can be something that recurs like every once in a while, where and then all of a sudden you hit that really uncomfortable emotion, and you go through it. You feel through it, and then all of a sudden you're in an experience of grace again, and everything just flows and is at ease. And it's not like, in a way, it's not really a miracle. It was always there. It's just that I don't see it because I'm programmed to not see it, or I made myself to not see it. Um, yeah,
yeah,
but yeah,
it's a good
images
point.
are very powerful. Not to
Yeah,
idolize, but to use as tools. Yeah, absolutely.
exactly. Yeah,
This, yeah,
yeah, and that you use images also to even get an inkling of what it's all about, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. Because images can hold an intention, or can represent the emotion, or represent a certain attitude, or yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
So it's really nice to keep a really open mind to what's really going on inside, and let it reveal itself, and not to think that anything is going wrong. and to I mean, you can judge yourself, you know, but then to recognize the judgment and say, okay, I judge this to be a certain way, I expect this to be a certain way. Even in meditation or anything that we do, we bring with us all these expectations. If you honestly look at it, there's a lot of that going on. I mean, I know for me there is. And so the trick is really to yeah, detach myself from not push them away, but to kind of loosen my grip on those things and to let go of my effort, like I said earlier, and to acknowledge that I simply don't know how this works. And then it starts working by itself. And then I come in a state and go, oh, I never want to leave this space again. And then another part comes in and wants to hold on to that. And there I lost it again, you know? So
Yes.
vigilance and awareness is required. So you say, yeah, meditation, of course, yeah. Be in a state of constant meditation or meditate before you start doing any type of work with yourself or, yeah. At least meditation also to really be get a pure sense of what life is for you, what your purpose is in life, and how you start your day, and just kind of coming from a place of clarity and cleanness in your mind to, and then it really doesn't matter what you do during the day because it's all coming from that place. And it becomes your expression. Oh man, I had such a struggle when I was, you know, with the Course in Miracles and at the academy at the time, and I was so struggling. Like, what is my function? I'm supposed to be teaching to thousands of people going around the world and stuff. And I did a little bit of that too, you know. But finally, that's such a burden. It's not a burden. My burden is light, Jesus says, right? So, and thank God I'm reading in the Way of Mastery. Like I'm not required to do anything. Like being a minister is just being able to find this peace and light within myself, and I don't have to say anything or do anything to anyone, unless it just happens, you know.
As
So
far as I know, A Course in Miracles doesn't ask you to do anything either.
no, that was just my own belief, you know. Because it talks about I'm among the ministers of the world, you know. I'm among the ministers of truth. What is it called again? I forgot it now.
The teacher of God.
And yeah, the whole teacher manual. So it's kind of like instills in you somehow, like, oh, I'm a teacher, you know, that looks and that does look a certain way. And coming from my own or old frame of mind, of course, I'm going to shape that somehow in my mind. Yeah, and of course, that's probably not how A Course in Miracles intends it, but yeah, that's when you start using a lot of words, then yeah, the mind will do with it what it wants. So it is
Yes,
good to
indeed.
be, yeah, it is good to be with others that can help you to break through or point out certain patterns. Like at the time I was with the master teacher and stuff, and I'm sure I still question it. Like on one hand, it wasn't all positive, but he was able to point out certain spots that I wasn't aware of, and I would just fall apart. I didn't even know why, and then all this stuff is revealed, you know. Uh, or yeah, um, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but it's good to have a true frame of reference. So to have a book like A Course in Miracles, a book like A Way of Mastery, or to meditate every day and listen to guys like Muji, or the guy that just passed on. What was his name? I forgot his name now. Tibetan priest or type monk. It's very popular here in Madison. Anyway, it doesn't matter. To have that in your life it can be very. You need a true frame of reference, yeah. And for me, like before I had A Course in Miracles, Jesus was that reference for me. He did come into my dream. You know, I was pretty desperate. I was journaling. I started to notice how insane my thoughts were when I started writing them down, and how conflictual and how addictive and how obsessive and all that kind of stuff. And because I put it outside of myself on paper, I was like, God, I've gone insane. You know, and I'd done that for a little while, the writing, and all of a sudden I wrote down help. And I mean, generally on my knees, you know, like I need help here. And then I took a shower and I felt this light, you know, and this presence coming in. It was like, yeah, it sounds a bit like cliche, like some kind of golden light. It wasn't like I could really see it, but I felt it. And not only did I feel it, like you just talked about images, and the image can hold a certain meaning, right? Or a certain energy. And I felt it with this light. It was holding, it was such a texture to it that I recognize it as Jesus. It could have been anyone, right? Like it's just light. It's absolutely completely abstract, but still in that presence, even there was no body shape or nothing like that. I knew it was him, and I was never like a religious type guy. You know, I just brought up Roman Catholic and just pushed that all away. And it doesn't mean anything like everybody else does, you know. But I was spiritual always, and but I never connected spiritual with Jesus until that time. You know what I'm saying? Because the West often looks to the East for spirituality and avoids everything that the Church represents for good reasons. And then to be brought back to Jesus is a really nice thing. And so he's still my guiding light in that way. Like I love his mind, and I just know somehow that he is the end result of what I'm looking for. It's just like, how willing am I to give up everything else that seems to be going on in my world for that? You know, of course I still strive for certain things, and I don't think there's anything wrong with strive because passion is behind it. Like I'm not asked to be a monk either, right? I'm not asked to cut off my life force, and that's what the way of mastery is saying too. Like desire is essential, you know. Nowhere in the course or in the Bible did Jesus say like it's money is bad or sexuality is bad, and those are the two items that we often struggle with and limit ourselves in. And yeah, with the money I'm doing okay. I'm kind of became more open with that. Sexuality is still a struggle in certain ways. But yeah, that's just how it is. That's what we have to work with, you know. That's what I'm working with, and but desire in itself. Oh yeah, that image you talked about, an image. You know, the image of that guy with in a cart with 10 horses and they're all pulling in a different direction, right? I think it's like an Eastern image.
Okay.
You don't know you don't know what I'm talking about. That image
I don't
or
have
that
it in my mind at this moment, but it
no.
sounds like everything is pulling in a different direction.
Right, it's a metaphor, and that's like a metaphor for desire, that they all like move in different directions. But there's nothing wrong with desire itself. So if I can master the desire, then I can, and that's what I'm saying. Like if I were able to bring all my desire in a place where I surrender it, or I'm humble within it, or I'm not trying to control it or possess it, or create like my own like separate world with it. You know, for example, I love to play jazz, and I could imagine myself being on stage again or playing with incredible musicians or whatever I could fantasize about. And that's not how it is for me anymore. Like I do it, I enjoy it, I am learning new stuff, and that always opens my mind. So whatever it is you do when you're in the act of learning, that's what life is, I think. You know, always opening up to different experiences and letting more energy come in, and but not to say, oh, certain things don't belong, but just ask yourself, so what place does this take in my life? Does it have a place? And if so, yeah, let's see where that is. But yeah, I always had a tendency to push certain things out of my life, and that doesn't work. So yeah.
Yeah, we can open the floor for questions if anyone has questions or comments, and otherwise we'll continue. Anyone have a question or a comment? It looks like you can continue explaining the whole thing. Yeah, amazing. So desires are not to be fought, but to be
Freed.
recognized and freed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just being proactive with it all, instead of, A Course in Miracles and Jesus, of course, says you're not a victim of this world, and but that requires a proactivity. Because if I'm not reactive to my state of feeling and my state of mind, then I do have to find a place before it all happens and say, okay, today I do want to feel happy. I do want to, and not from a forceful place again, but it's more like as an invitation of what experience I would like to have. Um, and again, I bring it back to prayer because it's not going to be a demand on the universe, because that wouldn't work either, I guess. But truly, I don't fully know how it works. It's just a practice, and it has worked for me. Sometimes it works really well, and sometimes it doesn't quite work, or there's resistance, and so be it. That's how it is. In days I can find that place, and then like bringing acceptance to whatever is going on with me. The moment I accept it or allow it to happen in my mind, like a judgment like that, or thinking that it's not going the way it is, or I'm not feeling the way I should be feeling, allowing for that usually shifts me and brings me back to everything is good, even a transcendent place, like everything here will pass and nothing here is gonna last forever, and just come back to a place of happiness, in the midst of the most intense stuff, um, yeah.
Yeah, I like it that
I
you're
just
so honest about it all.
at some point I found that to be key, honest and integrity, because I felt out of integrity somehow. I couldn't place myself with it because I was presenting myself as an identity that had the top all together, but didn't want to deal with the bottom of myself and others, and I expressed that before. Um, But yeah, there was also a tendency to be too honest, because I don't have to share every particular thing with everyone, like you got to protect yourself as well. I really go with some people in a spiritual way, they just think that they have to be open to everything. But Jesus said, like, you don't throw your pearls before swine. And when you're doing this type of work, you come into an altered space of consciousness. And if you go out in the regular world and expect everyone to be there on that same level, you're going to be surprised, and you're going to be painfully reminded that the world isn't designed to welcome you in your in your Christhood always. So it's very good to protect yourself in this process without isolating yourself. So to find like-minded people that are on the same track, and also know that what is true is still true for the people that seem to be resistant or refusing what you have to offer. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone, and yeah, that's been a big lesson for me too. Um, it's me, I choose to change my mind, and I don't have to have, or I'm not asked to have the expectation for others to do the same. And there's a lot of freedom and power in that. I withdraw the power I've given to other to decide whether or not I can be happy here, or to whether or not I can be myself. Um, and I take that power back. And I become invisible to some people, or a weirdo to some people. And then I judge that, I perceive that, and then I let that one go and forgive that, because I never fully fit in. First of all, I'm a Dutch guy who lives in Wisconsin, of all places, in a rural area, and I am not at all like the people around here, but still I find myself here. It's really strange. in a way. In the other way, it helps me really to transcend and to fully open up. And I have those moments here where I totally connect and join with people, and I think, yeah, I am just as much, have every right to be here. I am from here, you know? I'm not from here, but therefore I am from here, and I have every right to be here because I'm just like you know, a being with feelings and needs and a true self that is unaltered, that cannot be changed. We all want the same things. So yeah, it brings
Yeah,
peace. Not, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, it does. Of Course in Miracles also speaks of how everyone wants to be perfectly happy. That's the
Mm-hmm.
only thing that everyone can agree on.
Yeah, everyone wants to be happy. I'm just thinking about that. Yeah. Some people might even say, "Oh no, that's not what I want." But yeah, in
Yeah,
deep down, everybody wants to be happy. Yeah,
I
yeah,
know there's people who would argue against that, but in A Course in
yeah.
Miracles, it says that everyone wants to be perfectly happy, and that's something one could agree on, as
Absolutely.
everyone would agree on. But we know there's people who would argue against that, of course.
But they still want to be happy, and they will still do the things that they believe will make them happy. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Whether they they acknowledge it or not. Yeah, yeah. We all have the same basic needs as well, and fulfilling and having those needs fulfilled is on a human level makes us happy and fulfilled. Like the needs such as that's what I'm learning with this compassion course I'm doing with my wife as well. And that's also a really nice level to perceive, to look at everything from a different perspective. Like everything you do is to meet a need. And if that's spiritual realization, of course, yeah, that would be, I guess, a very genuine, fundamental need. But there's other needs, just like everybody wants to be happy, everyone wants to connect, everyone wants to experience a shared reality with others. You know, otherwise you feel isolated and alone, and all these things. So it's a nice way to approach life with that too. And that even judgments are expressing a need. Judgments, you don't have to judge your judgments because they can tell you something about what you're lacking in your own experience. And usually a love can fill any lack or any need, bringing love to it and intention to it. But being aware of your needs and then being open to the universe as to the strategy in which that need will be met or can be met is where the miracle can happen too. Yeah, it's just another form of honesty and awareness. Yeah, there are certain things I need, and I deserve those things because I'm whole. You know, I'm created perfect, and I don't have to lack anything. Yeah.
No sacrifices required, it says in A
No
Course in
sacrifice
Miracles.
required. Exactly. Yes, I don't have to sacrifice myself for the greater good or for a later result. Exactly. Yeah, and there's nothing selfish about taking care of myself and choosing myself first. Because if I don't choose myself first, I can't be there for anyone else. I'm going to be a people pleaser, going to sacrifice myself. They're going to walk all over me, and they're not going to be held by that either. Anyway, but being in my own wholeness without even saying a word, they can look to me and say, "Oh, there's something attractive about this guy." You know, hopefully not sexually attractive because I don't know how to deal with that. But they will recognize something in you and then resonate, you know, from that place or shift accordingly. Yeah. So to teach us to demonstrate is what the Course in Miracles says, and uh, and not out of effort, I must say. So otherwise, I go out and holding banners up in the streets. That's not what is required. Demonstrate is just being in tune with my own feelings, my needs, and my true reality, and not being afraid to show that. And then everything, and then this world will be left behind, and you'll join Jesus in saying like, I'm in the world, but not of it, or I have overcome the world. And it seems like such a big deal, but it's actually very simple in certain moments and very powerful. And there's absolutely no opposition to that other than my own fears and doubts. Yeah. And with that, I'll probably have to wrap it up here, Waniko, because I have to get ready for work.
Yeah.
Unless you have
I'm
any
aware of the
questions.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to speak about now before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I just hope it's been helpful to anyone. I have the tendency to talk kind of quick and throw out a lot of ideas, but yeah, we only have an hour, and that's kind of what has been most helpful to me over the last 12 years or so. Or in this moment, really, because that's how more and more I start experiencing myself in this moment. And taking it one day at a time, and really starting to connect with people. It's great on this level of reflection of true identity, and if not that, at least working on seeing what stands in the way of it. And that's what anybody who is on the spiritual path, like A Course in Miracles, please don't just fly off and do the spiritual bypass like I've done, but do both, And the Way of Mastery says too, like in his lifetime and in our lifetime, in my lifetime, we're confronted with different schools of thought that seem to be conflicted with each other. And he says, well, see it as an oyster. It says those things grind up against each other until you have the perfect pearl, and until you recognize what is your path exactly clear before you, and that's, in that sense, we all have our own journey and our own road to go. And we can include everything, and the truth will be left for us, in the way that we can, in the way that's most practical and available, understandable and accessible for us. Yeah, and good luck. And thank you for the opportunity to speak here.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's really one of the big and one of the beautiful qualities of a teacher of God is to be open-minded. So that's what you just mentioned. Being open-minded can be the way that opens the option of actually getting to that pearl, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So if anyone would like to reach out to you, where would be a good place to do that?
Oh, just by email would be good. Do you have my email?
Just, you can send me your email and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, is there a place here to text that, so it's available for anyone who is here now, or how do I do that?
You just put it in a comment to.
I'll leave a comment. I see it here. Yeah. I'll write it down for you at least, and then if you want to post it somewhere, that's fine. Yeah, I always check my email, and then it just gives me the time to respond if anyone has a question or anything else. Yeah, so there it is. I just send it to you. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Thank you, Waniko. Yeah.
So, thank you so much, Bastiaan. I will thank you everyone for listening, for participating, and please leave reviews of the podcast and spread the word so that more people find it. And yeah, till next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Waniko. Bye.